Hi there, my name is Amy Tierce, Regional Vice President of Wintrust Mortgage, covering the Northeast, and I'm here to talk to you today about building the brand of you. A little session in personal branding for people in real estate and other industries. I personally think that branding begins with getting noticed. That's what we're out to do. We want to gain attention. We want people to talk about us. We want to be getting noticed. And that's something I want you to think about as I go through my presentation here today. But before I begin in earnest, I want to talk a little bit about credentials and credibility, because whenever I attend an event or look at a webinar or read a book, I really want to know the experience behind this expert that I'm listening to. So if these things matter to me, I thought they might matter to you as well. So very quickly on who I am and how I got here, I dropped out of high school when I was 16 years old, got my GED in a day, and went and volunteered at WBCN Radio in downtown Boston. I was convinced I was going to be a music industry entrepreneur. Very quickly after that, I got a full-time job at WBCN, worked there for a few years, moved on to selling advertising at the Boston Phoenix, where I handled music industry accounts, worked for a little-known Boston band called the Cars, later worked for a management company that had a band called Emmett Dooley and Bad Habits. Emmett Dooley and I will be married 34 years this November. So a lot of my branding experience came around helping to brand music industry and do marketing and advertising in that space. I then in '85 got a job as a realtor at the age of 24, and in 1990 I went into mortgages. From the time I started in mortgages, I think is when really my personal branding concept started to take more shape. I always felt that it was important to go big and build big and get known. But it took me a long time, almost 20 years now, to start to pull all of the differences in these branding approaches together. One of the things that I did was I was always drawn to no-name mortgage companies. And so again, to go back to the credentials, since my mortgage business career began in 1990, I've been basically a top 5 or top 3 producer everywhere I worked. In 2005, I opened the first New England branch for Fairway Mortgage. I did that out of my bedroom with my business partner, and 10 years later, Fairway had about $1 billion in production and something in excess of 10 branches in this area. 2 years ago, I left there to do it all over again with a new no-name mortgage company in the New England market. So that's a little bit about my branding story. When you go with no-name entities, branding becomes very, very important. In your world of real estate, branding is all about you, the individual, and you're very lucky as independent contractors. You have so much more flexibility over how you can present yourselves and what you want to say and what you want to be as you develop your personal brand. So what is the definition of brand? A traditional definition is it's a product manufactured by a particular company under a particular name. But what I think of is that a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. What do you want people to be saying about you? I thought about that a lot. You know, think about brands, entities, companies, people who have become brands purely through word of mouth, purely because of people talking about them at a cocktail party. The one that jumps into my head is Uber. How many people listening to this webinar today have used Uber? You've probably heard about it from a friend or a colleague or somebody who was on the app waiting while you were standing waiting for a cab. Well, Uber to me was just an amazing branding entity that was all about what people were saying when they weren't in the room. And you know, you want your real estate career to be like that as much as possible. Things to think about when building your personal brand. Package. What's your package? I'm not talking about, you know, sexing up or $3,000 suits. It's what you want to present and the people that you think you want to be connected with. We all have a sense of likability, meaning we like people who are more like us. So you need to think about who your audience is and how you're packaging yourself and your services to connect with that audience. What's your promise? What is it that you're going to do that's going to set you apart? What is it that you're going to guarantee? What's the experience like that you're going to share with the clients who work with you? What's your purpose? Not only why are you doing it, but why should people work with you? And of course, what's your passion? Because I think passion really feeds very much into how we build our own personal brands. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So building a personal brand, I think, really starts with getting the word out there, and getting the word out there is networking. And you can start this before you've even figured out what your personal brand is or how you want it to be or how you want to be thought of, because first people have to get to know you. And maybe you need to get to know the people in your community and the networking spheres that you're interested in. So start by networking, and remember to wear a name tag. Right-hand side, folks, so that when you go to shake your hand, the eye is drawn to your right shoulder, and that's the proper place for a name tag. Name tags are important. Think about it. As you build your personal brand, people may have heard of you, but they may not know what you look like, and they see that name tag at a networking event, and they'll come up and say hi, and vice versa. I certainly find that I start way more conversations when I know who people are. So wear a name tag. Wear it all the time. Wear it proudly. You'll be amazed at what might happen as a result. So when I was working, started early in my networking, I went to an event. It was actually a real estate event where Chip Case was speaking. May he rest in peace. Chip, of course, is the economist from the Chase-Shiller Index. Now, this was back in the 90s before he had started that particular index, but Chip was a professor, an economics professor at Wellesley College, and spoke a lot to us in the real estate industry over the years. It was the 90s. We were kind of sliding into a recession, and before going to the event where Chip was speaking, I had read an article in that morning's Boston Globe about applying different economic theories to the situation ahead of us. And when Chip wrapped up and asked for questions, I boldly raised my hand and asked him about whether applying Keynesian economic theory to the current state of our economy would be a solution. So he began by answering that question, saying, "Wow, what a great question," and then, went on to discuss what I had posed. When the event wrapped up, I found myself surrounded by several real estate agents asking for my card. And at that point, I realized what I wanted to brand myself as. I wanted to be, as we say in Boston, the wicked smart loan officer. And so that's kind of my personal brand, although you won't see wicked smart written anywhere on anything I do. But that's how I try to think of myself, or how I want to present myself to my community. So think about these things when you're out there. Raise your hand. That will do a lot for your personal brand. Another key characteristic, I think, in personal branding, this is my belief system, is be optimistic. One of my second job in the mortgage industry was with an unknown mortgage company. It was 1995, and I was getting ready to move for various reasons, and I had been interviewing at companies all over Massachusetts. And I walked into an office with a brand new company run by two brothers, HomeVest Mortgage, which was subsequently sold. And it was the two brothers and one of their mother-in-laws as the receptionist, and one loan officer and me. And I loved it there, because these guys were the most optimistic people I had talked to in the mortgage industry over the 6 months of my job search. The business was down, the economy was shaky, and other mortgage companies were bemoaning the decline in business. And these guys were celebrating every new deal that came in the door. The optimism was infectious, and that's why I wanted to work there. Not because they were the biggest or the best known, but because I knew with that kind of environment I could thrive. People really like optimism, even during tough times, even during tough conversations. Optimism means that you find solutions to difficult problems. So try to be optimistic. Unless you want to brand yourself as the curmudgeonly realtor, I don't really recommend that. There may be a couple of people in an audience for you in that category, but think about optimism as part of how you're going to package yourself. Another thing to really talk about is turning heads, getting attention, getting noticed. How are you going to do that? Well, like I said, it may start with your packaging. I know incredibly successful realtors who look like they just walked off of being 3 days at Woodstock. And they do really well, and they've got great clients who respect them and refer them and do business with them. So like I said, your package is about who you want to be and how you want to be perceived. I don't know, you guys probably know that in the downtown Boston market, there's an additional listing tool other than MLS called Link. Well, back in the 90s, the downtown Boston realtors did not use MLS hardly at all. Link was the way they got all of their listing and change market information. And at the time, pre-internet, pre-email, pre-even, sort of digital anything, Link was just 8.5 by 11 photocopied paper. And it got dropped at real estate offices on Fridays throughout the city. And I took ads in Link. So unfortunately, I don't have an example of the ad in question, but the first ad I ran in Link had me lying on my side. I was against a white backdrop, hand on my head like this. And the headline said, "Relax. If you're doing business with Amy Tierce, you're in good hands," or something like that. I ran that ad, and literally the first day, that Friday that Link hit the steps, I got a call from a realtor who said, "Anybody who has the balls to put themselves out there and Link like that is somebody who deserves my business." So that was an example of me turning heads. And that's a realtor who I still do some business with today. So that was a long time relationship. But I basically was able to, take an ad and get noticed and build that attention and turn heads. Here's a sample of what some of those other ads look like. It's not as good of an example as me lying on my side. I wish I could find that one. You also want to be interesting. What is it that you're going to talk about? What is it that people want to hear from you? There's so much information out there today that needs to be shared, and people need your interpretation as an expert about what to think. I got a mailer at my house recently, and I subsequently wrote a blog about it because it was just sold. It was a white envelope with a sticky label addressed to, resident and my address. And I looked at it and I went, just listed, just sold, who cares? Tell me something I want to know. Maybe paint a picture on why somebody made a move to help me as a homeowner think, promote some emotion in me about getting excited about moving. Or why a neighbor might move into your neighborhood and what was the excitement for them. When we paint pictures in the way we market, when we lead people to new dreams or new thoughts, then we're being effective. So be interesting, make people think. Here's a couple of examples of just some different postcard campaigns that I used where I tried to put myself out there, use more casual language, have a little fun with it, and still provide valuable information. Another thing to really think about in your personal branding, and I think that this is something that a lot of people don't give enough, pay enough attention to. You will be judged by the company you keep. And I mean that in good ways and bad ways. A most positive way was, again, early in my career, a realtor in downtown Boston who subsequently retired several years ago really took me under her wing. And we did a fair amount of business together, but really that relationship helped my personal brand so much because the agents looked at me and said, well, if this person sends her business, she must be pretty good. And the truth was, she probably sent me far less business than anybody thought, but our relationship had value that went so far beyond the back and forth of what she could refer to me as direct business, but the whole broader world of introductions she could make and connections she could help me make that meant so much more. So remember, the company you keep is enormous. It can also be very negative. When you're out there looking at your business relationships, attorneys, accountants, financial planners, inspectors, perhaps appraisers, lenders, all of these reflect back on you and your personal brand. Make sure that you're selecting to work with very high quality people, people that you want to be known to be associated with, not people who may actually by association, tarnish your reputation. I think in the business world, we take these things very seriously. So both positively and negatively, pay attention to the company you keep and who you're seen with. Make sure to engage entertain, and educate in the marketing that you provide. It took a while, of course, because I started in the analog world and then got to move in career-wise into the digital world. And as I built my first website, I was able to provide content that directing to the website, and the website was a mirror back. So the websites weren't as robust and interactive then. It wasn't as though I could have such robust content, but I used postcard marketing to get people to pay attention to the website. And always using kind of my personality and different topics to get people interested in what it was that we were talking about at any given time. Of course, the digital era moved us into so many different ways to brand ourselves. So, I started in the music business and I was thinking, Amy rocks. How would I say that in real estate speak? And I realized Amy Rates was the way to do it, and I could play with that a lot. So I started with my first email address of amyrates.com. I was later able to brand to get my own domain name. So now I am, and have been since the year 2000, Amy at amyrates.com. And of course, able to build my website, now a WordPress blog site, amyrates.com. I will tell you that I can go to an event and run into somebody I haven't seen in 5 years, and they may not, really remember a lot about me, but people go, "Hey, Amy Rates." So that branding of my name as a way to reach me, connecting me to Rates, Amy Rates. People don't forget my email address as a result. Make sure you brand an email address and take it with you wherever you go. All of this was coming together. I was doing postcard marketing. I did have a database, although if I knew then what I know today, I would have paid way more attention to building a very robust database. Huge and important tool for personal branding. I now had branded my domain name, and I had a website. And I went to an event, a mortgage industry event, not dissimilar, say, from something that a Brian Buffini or Joe Stumpf might do. This is a guy in mortgages called Todd Duncan. And one of the guys speaking at this event was talking about how he used postcards very aggressively in his marketing to the real estate community. And I think about every 2 weeks he did a postcard blast out. Now, again, remember, this is quite a while ago, so I think they were just photocopied on bright yellow little pieces of tear-off cards that he did in his own office, and he would dump about 400 postcards a couple times a week. And he told the story about how one time he was having such a hard time figuring out content for this particular mailing. And the reason he was distracted and having a hard time dealing with this was because his dog was very, very ill. And so he decided to write about that in his postcard. "I'm sorry, I don't have more real estate-driven content for you. My dog is sick." And what happened was his phone rang off the hook with his real estate connections calling him to ask about the health of his dog. And he had an aha moment, which became an aha moment for me. Make it personal. People really like to know the people they do business with. And that felt to me like I was given permission to do something I had always wanted to do, but hadn't quite figured out how to do it. And so, for example, on my website is my bio. And in my bio, talks about the fact that I have a son with Down syndrome. In the last 20 years, I cannot tell you how many people, as a result of knowing about this, have come to me. They've had a brother, a sister, a friend, a best friend's kid, their own kid, or they teach special ed, or they work in that community. Just that little fact about me, a deeply personal fact about me, has helped me connect to so many people in a more significant way in a professional capacity. Don't be afraid to tell the truth. Don't be afraid to dig deep. Don't be afraid to be personal. One of the things that we've done a fair amount of is some entertaining. Customer appreciation events. You guys all do these, or a lot of us do. In fact, when we went to launch our website, we had an event at my house. And I joke with the people in the mortgage community when I talk about this. Yes, invite realtors to your house, but definitely clean out your closets first. So when everybody came to my door, I said, "You're welcome to tour the home." We lived in a 3,500 square foot dump of a Victorian that we had renovated. So I knew the house itself was going to become part of our brand and part of the reason why people were curious about coming to this celebration. You'll see here, this was the invitation. It was a zukuski. A zukuski is sort of the technique of drinking vodka in Russia. I had gone to Kazakhstan with my sister for a little over a month when she went to adopt a baby, and I had just returned. And so we were going to kind of honor that as part of the theme around the website launch. We gave out shot glasses that had amyrates.com etched on them. And we had Russian music and some Russian foods, although not too many, mostly vodka, because Russian food wasn't all that great. But back to the Zukuski for a moment, just to kind of fill you in on that. You know how with tequila, you lick the salt, shoot the tequila, bite the lime, something like that. Well, with a Zukuski, in case you want to know, at least this is what our Russian driver told us. You take a pickle or something spicy and salty, pickle, piece of salami, spiced fish. You sniff it, you shoot your vodka, and then you bite your pickle. That's a Zukuski. I could be wrong. Please feel free to email me and correct me if I have my data incorrect. But that was another area in our personal branding that we talked about something that was significant that had happened in our lives. We invited people into our home. We made it very intimate. So as we continued down this story, I had to think now a little bit more about the personal branding and then how I was going to take that and brand a team. Because now I am no longer just a loan officer, but I had opened up a mortgage company and had to try to recruit people. It actually was much easier than I thought it was going to be, because the truth was the extension of my personal brand was what was going to draw people into working with our crew and with me as a leader. And I had to continue to work on the branding, but the branding had to be more inclusive for the entire team. I have to say that I think the Wicked Smart personal brand of my own really came together with the mortgage meltdown, and a lot of the branding that we created as a result of that period, horrible, dark days in our industry. A lot of my personal brand really came together and grew out of that time. I got very angry at one point when a realtor buddy of mine called because a loan had been declined by another lender and asked if I could step in. And in a very short interview, I realized within about 5 minutes that the loan was never going to get done. Well, that just set me on edge, and I spent the night tossing and turning and finally got up in the middle of the night and fired off what became the beginning of my weekly blog post, which is called the Wintrust Advisor. I was angry that people had let this buyer down. It was a 3.5% down FHA deal. And the condo did not meet the requirements. And had the loan officer asked the question first thing, that borrower would have saved at least $1,000 between the inspection and the appraisal that they had already paid for, but also would have saved themselves the anxiety, the heartbreak, the stress of spending 6 weeks waiting for a mortgage commitment that wasn't going to come. And so at that point, the Wicked Smart loan officer reared her ugly head and really started talking differently about the mortgage industry and how we could do it differently and better. So sometimes things can really light you up and impassion you. And if you can find something like that in your world, that's going to be a good place for you to start building your personal brand from. Hey, listen, I'm a mortgage geek, so I'm passionate about mortgages. And so my brand evolves out of that, about wanting to be smart and wanting to educate and help people. But your brand can come from lots of different places. You could be, crazy about Harley Davidsons. Gosh, there are a lot of people out there who are. And what a great economic point that the people who are Harley drivers also are, that's a great demographic. So if that's something you're passionate about, maybe that's part of how you weave that into your business. Maybe you seek out the insurance people who are the best at insuring motorcycles. Maybe you seek out a couple of attorneys in the real estate space who are also passionate about riding. If you blend all of that together, you can be the easy rider realtor and use that as your personal brand. It can be as far left field as that. What makes you light up? That's what you should be thinking about engaging into your personal brand. Because if it's something that inspires you, you'll find like-minded people who will be inspired by you. So as I tried to brand for the team, I had to come up with campaigns, branding, and promotions that would work for everybody. And here's just some silly things that we put together that, again, we wanted them to be educational. We wanted them to pop. We wanted them to turn heads. We wanted to have a sense of humor. And we've managed to do that, I think, with a lot of the branding that we've engaged in. But all of it has been kind of an offshoot of our personal beliefs collectively as a team of mortgage professionals and my own as the leader of this motley crew. So what's in your personal branding toolbox? Well, we've already talked about domain names. We've talked about building your own website, how you want your presence to be felt. I would say keep it personal. I would use a lot of photography so people know who you are. Put your picture everywhere. We are in this incredible age where people see us in a way that they never did before. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to address some social media tools, because what's huge in your personal branding toolbox is your ability to touch people on so many different platforms and in so many different ways. I will say that Facebook for me has been an amazing tool. Now, of course, my audience, or who I'm trying to reach, is a little more focused perhaps than yours is as realtors, because I'm trying to reach you guys. So I know collectively I want to reach a team, a group of real estate agents, real estate professionals, and then the people who are involved in our industries. You guys are trying to go direct to the consumer, and it's not that we're not doing that as well, but we have a much different strategy. And so going direct to consumer for a real estate agent is definitely a much broader form of networking. So you need to pare that down. Who do you want to be friends with? Who do you want to connect with? Who are the people who are going to become your foot soldiers, your extension of you as salespeople, your referral network? Those are the people you need to find. One of the ways that I have engaged with people and truly built significant friendships with has been utilizing Facebook. The first thing I do is try to identify the people that I want to get to know. And I spend my time on Facebook not posting, but listening to what they're talking about, what matters to them. And this could be anyone from a consumer directly to a financial planner, to a real estate agent, to somebody I want to get to know for some reason, have on my team. Loosely on my team. So first I listen to what they're saying, and then I try to determine based on, how I perceive them on Facebook, if they are truly an individual, a human being that I want to be doing business with, that I want to be associated with, whose company I want to be seen in. And once that's been determined, I may start liking what they're saying, or sharing what they're saying, or repeating and remarking to some of their posts. And over time, this kind of develops into a little bit of a back and forth. I can tell you that I've got at least a dozen people in my immediate sphere of influence today who I met 100% on Facebook. We engaged, we started a conversation, and finally I messaged out, I'm really enjoying our Facebook relationship. Shall we take it offline and turn it live? And meet somebody for lunch, and off we go. And those relationships have been very valuable. Another way that social media can be incredibly helpful is when we go back to that networking thing. Today, I know more people than when I walk into a room than I ever used to. I will research them because in most networking events, you get a list of the people who are going to attend. Certainly Chamber of Commerce events, classes and programs, you usually see the attendee list. Figure out who in that list you want to get to know. Go research them a little bit. I always feel like any event I attend is successful if I've made one solid connection. Well, that takes all of that throwing out a big net, makes it a whole lot easier. There's one person I was met to meet here today. That's how I approach every event that I go to. Now, I may end up meeting 5 or 10, but if I've met just one, it has been valuable to me. So researching people on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram is a way for me to get to know them. Now think about this. When you see somebody that you've known from afar, or maybe you do know in a social setting like a networking event, and you walk up to them to say hi, what a different conversation you have when you say, Wow, your trip to Europe last month looked fantastic. How did you decide to go to Croatia? Is a whole different conversation than, and how's business? How are the kids? Right? Now you know something about what this person is doing. Or congratulations on that deal that you just put together. Awesome. Or there's a million ways to open a conversation. You'll also know more people because now you've seen their photo and their name, photo, name, every time you've liked or commented or they have. It's just this repetitive activity. So now I know so many more people as a result of paying attention to them through social media. So I think a huge component in your personal branding toolbox has got to be dedicating an hour or so a day to just checking everybody out on social media and make sure you're up to date on what's going on in their lives. And I got to tell you, as you know, nothing feels better than a happy birthday wish, even from somebody who you haven't actually physically met. Pay attention to those little things. It'll get you a lot of credibility and help enhance your brand. Another thing that's really important in all of this as we wrap up is you want to dive deep. You want to go deep into who you are and what matters to you. You want to make this brand something that you live and breathe. It's your personal brand. It can't be superficial. People will smell that. So dig deep. Go personal, be intimate, be yourself. Find the things that you're passionate about and go deep. So let's get back to our toolbox again. We're thinking about our package. That's who we are and how we show up. So how do you want to show up and how do you want to be thought of? Your promise. What's your promise to yourself, your promise to your community? Why working with you as the individual is different than working with the person sitting next to you? And your purpose, not just your why you're doing it, knowing why you're doing anything in your life and really connecting to that why is hugely important in integrating passion into your personal brand. But also, why should people be doing business with you? What sets you apart? Why is your experience, your offered experience, different from the competition's? Weave your passion in there, whatever that passion is, whether it's like me, a passion for being a mortgage geek, or whether it's a passion for Harleys, whether it's a passion for fashion, whether it's a passion for a particular cause or charity. Nothing more powerful in my mind than cause marketing. Once again, going back to that company you keep, showing people the causes that you care about, the charities you're engaged in, how you want to give back to your community, I think is a very significant part of your personal brand. So let's go back to the very beginning and talk about why we're here and what personal branding means. Well, here are your keys. We've got networking. We're talking about being optimistic. You want to turn heads. You want to be interesting. You want to pay attention to the company you keep. You want to engage, entertain, and educate. Because at the end of the day, what matters is getting noticed. Building a personal brand and staying in your closet is not going to get you anywhere. Building a personal brand that gets you noticed and then weaving the brand and how you get noticed into the activities with which you conduct yourself every single day, that's when a brand comes together and starts to sing for you. So just remember, it's the brand of you. And think about your P's and think about getting noticed. And thank you for your time here today. I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a line. I bet you remember that email address, amy@amyrates.com.